This is going to go over the practice test to make sure everything's clear. So in the first ones, they ask you to write the equation in the line and interpret the slope. And so we've got graphs, and so what they're asking us to do here is put things in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. And so to do that, we need to be able to find the slope. So m is the slope, which remember is rise over run. And that we can find given two ordered pairs by using the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. B, remember, is the y-intercept, and that is where it crosses, so where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, so those are the two things that we need to be able to find in this. So when you look at this, they give us two ordered pairs. So in this one, they give us the ordered pair 630 and 115. So we've got 630 and 115. So we're going to use the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And remember, you can use, it doesn't make any difference which one you call the second set and which one you call the first set, as long as if I call this the second y, then this is the second x. If I call this the second y, then that's the second x. So I'm going to call this the second set and go 30 minus 15 over 6 minus 1, which equals 5. And so now we know that the slope is 5. And then we go to the equation, y equals mx plus b, and we're going to plug 5 in. And we choose one of these ordered pairs. I'm going to choose the 15-1, or 115. And so I put 15 in for y. I put in, sorry, this is 15 over 5, which is 3. Sorry about that. So our slope is 3. 3, and then I'm going to plug 1 in for x, plus b, so 3 times 1 is 3, subtract 3, and we get 12 equals b. And so now I can write my equation. Our slope's 3, 3x plus 12. Okay? So again, that was 30 minus 15 is 15, 6 minus 1 is 5, and we divide 15 divided by 5 is 3 to give us the slope. So the others are the exact same. 3 is a little bit different in that we have the ordered pairs 2, 3, and 4, 3. Okay? And so when I do this, I get 3 minus 3 over 4 minus 2, and I get 0 divided by 2, and 0 divided by anything is 0. So our slope 0. We also know that the y-intercept, we know it crosses at 3 because it's always at 3. So our equation would just become y equals 3. So that's how you do the first 3. All right, so 4 and 5 are solving systems of equations. So we have 3 equations with 3 variables. So on 4, let's write those down first of all. So we have the equations. So again, the first thing we want to do is determine which variable you rid of. Now again, you can do any variable you want. My advice is always to do the one that has the smallest number that they all go into. So like the x's, we have 1, 1, and 3. Those all go into 3. 6, 5, and 2, the first number those would all go into would be 30. And 2, 3, and 4 would be 12. So again, you can choose to get rid of whatever variable you like, but if you take the one that has the smallest number they all go into, then you have smaller numbers to work with. So I'm going to take the x's, and so I'm going to take, we've got these 3 equations. I'm going to take 1 and 2 because the x's are already opposites. And I don't have to change anything that way. And so when we add these together, the x's cancel. Negative 6 plus 5 is a negative y, negative 1y. Negative 2 plus 3 is a positive z, and negative 8 plus 2 is a negative 6. Then I'm going to take 2 and 3, and the opposite of 3 is negative 3, so I'm going to have to take equation 2 and multiply that all by 3. So negative 3x plus 15y plus 9z equals 6, and 3x minus 2y minus 4z equals 18. Add those together, again the x's cancel, so I get 13y plus 5z equals 24. So now I need to work with these two, and again I need to get opposites. I could do the y's, but again then I'd have to multiply it by 13, so I'm going to do the z's and multiply this equation by a negative 5. And so we get 5y minus 5z equals 30. And this one stays the same, so 13y plus 5z equals 24. And so 18y equals 54 divided by 18. So y equals 3. So now once you have 1, you can plug that into either this equation or this equation and solve for z. So I'm going to go to this one because they're smaller, so negative y. I'm going to put in 3, so that becomes negative 3. And then plus z equals negative 6. So we add 3 to solve for z, so z equals negative 3. So now I've got two answers, and so now I'm going to plug it into the first one and solve for x. So x minus 6 times 3 would be 18. Negative 2 times a negative 3 would be a positive 6 equals negative 8. So negative 18 plus 6 is a negative 12 equals negative 8. So we add 12, and we get x equals 4. So now that I have all three answers, my answer, remember, is an ordered triple. And so they go in alphabetical order. Now what's nice is you can always plug those back in and check it to see if it works. Okay? All right, number 5. So again, I'm going to write down these equations. Again, we have to choose a variable to get rid of. So in this case, 2, 1, and 5 go into 10. 1, 6, and 7 go into 42. And 1, 2, and 1 go into 2. So I'm going to get rid of the z's. I'm going to use equation 1 and 3 because those are already opposites. And they stay the same. Add those together. 7x plus 8y equals 13, because these cancel. And then I'm going to use 1 and 2, and I'm going to multiply the first equation by 2 to get opposites. So 4x plus 2y minus 2z equals 18. And negative x plus 6y plus 2z equals negative 17. Add those together. 4 and negative 1 is 3x. Plus 8y equals 1. So now I need to work with these two and get opposites. So again, the y's are pretty easy. I can just multiply this one by a negative 1. So I get negative 3x minus 8y equals negative 1. Add them together, 4x equals 12. Divide by 4, so x equals 3. Now I'm going to take this and plug it into this one. 3 times 3 is 9. Plus 8y equals 1, subtract the 9, and divide by 8. And so y equals a negative 1. And now we're going to plug it into, let's go to the top one. So 2 times 3 is 6, plus y, which is negative 1, minus z equals 9. So 6 plus negative 1 is 5. Subtract 5, negative z equals 4. So z equals negative 4. So let's just check this and make sure I got it right. So I'm going to plug it in the second one. So the opposite of 3 would be negative 3. 6 times negative 1 is a negative 6. 2 times negative 4 is a negative 8. So negative 9 minus 8 is a negative 17, which is what it was supposed to be. So we know we got it right. So our answer is 3, negative 1, negative 4. So those are the 3 by 3s. So now we go to 6 and 7. So 6 asks us to write a possible equation that could represent the graph. And they give us the parent function of y equals absolute value of x. and they ask us to stretch it vertically and reflect it over the x-axis. So the first thing vertical stretches are multiplication, and vertical, remember, affects the whole thing. And stretches have to be a number greater than 1, so to do this, you could pick any number you want to go in here as long as it's greater than 1. So I could pick 3, 7, doesn't make any difference. Excuse me. And then we reflect it over the x-axis, and again, reflections are negative signs, and again, reflections affect the whole thing. So I put the negative sign in front, so my answer would be, and again, you could have any number you want there, as long as it's not a half or a fraction. So then we go to 7, there are a few more things to do on this. It's basically the same thing they ask us, but it says it shrunk vertically. So remember, shrinks are less than 1. So I can just pick any number, a fraction less than 1, and put that there. And then reflect it over the x-axis. Again, reflections are negative signs, and x-axis is vertical, so it goes in front. And then we're going to shift it 3 to the left. Now remember, left is a horizontal translation, and so that would be, remember, anytime it's horizontal, it's the inverse of what it says. So 3 left would be a negative 3. So we do x plus 3. And then up 2, well, up 2 is vertical, so it affects the whole thing, so we put it out front. And so this would be our function. And again, you could have any fraction there you wanted other than, as long as it's less than 1. Lastly, they want us to, on this page, make the transformations. So transformations, remember, that's a transformation of f of x equals x. So the first thing we need to understand is what that graph looks like of f of x equals x. Well, remember, that would be like, if this would be y equals x, then it's, if I put in 1, then y is 1, and put in 0, it's 0, and so this would be just a graph that looked like that for all of these. They want us one that is reflected over the x-axis, so now it's going to be going down. It's going to have a slope of -4, and it's going to cross at 5. Well, this one crosses at -5, this one crosses at 5, and this one crosses at 4, so 8 would have to be B. 9, the slope stays the same. It's not going to flip over, so it's going to be going up, and we only have one graph that's going up, so this has to be it, but it crosses at -5, and the slope is 4, and so that would be A. And then on 10, it crosses at 4, it's flipped over, and has a slope of -5. Well, this one, so it has to be going down to the right when it's flipped over. It has to cross at 4, which is there, and slope of -5, so 10 would have to be C. So on the next page, it asks you to identify the vertex and the transformation of and graph the following equation. Well, remember, when we first started this, we talked about vertex form. And that's vertex form, and remember the vertex is HK, where H is opposite what it says. So our value for A in this case is -2. Our H, remember, is opposite what it says, so it's -4. And our K is -8. And our vertex then would be HK, which would be -4, -8. They also ask us to identify the transformations. So just take each one separately. Remember, the negative sign outside reflects in x-axis, or over x-axis, either way. The 2 is a vertical stretch of 2. The -4, remember, is 4 to the left. The -8 is down 8, and then they ask you to graph it. Well, we know the vertex is -4, -8, so over 4, down 8. And we know the slope is -2, so down 2 over 1, which means it's +2 this way. And so our graph would look like that. So that's number 11. 12, they want you to graph these functions and its parent function. So remember, the parent function for absolute value is y equals the absolute value of x. So that graph, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 4, 4, and so on. And then remember, it forms a V, and so all the parent functions are going to be exactly the same. So those all look the same. And so now we're going to graph this one, which remember is 4 to the left and reflected over the x-axis. So I go over 4, and it would be reflected down. So it would look like that. 13 is just down 2. Now remember, these lines are by 2, so it's just going to go to here. But the slope's going to stay the same. So it would look like that. And then 13, a little bit more, it goes, remember it's minus 4, so that would be 4 to the right. And then up 2. And then we have a slope of negative 2, so down 2 over 1. And the same thing the other way. And so that graph would look like that. This one says the table below shows the amount of fuel left in the RV while driving. What is the equation? Well, you could use a graphing calculator on this, but it's faster just to use because these are all going up by 20, and these are all going down by 2. So if they're all the same, then it's linear, and so our slope would just be the change in y, which is negative 2, over the change in x, which is 20, and so that would be reduced to a negative 1/10. And we already know the y-intercept, because remember the y-intercept is when x is 0, and so our y-intercept is 18, and so we have our equation now. And then they want to know what would it be after 90 minutes. So 90, your minutes is your x value, so we plug in 90. And so 1/10 times 90 would be negative 9 plus 18, so our answer would be, it says estimate the amount of fuel left, and it would be 9 gallons. Okay? On the next one, same thing. We've got 2 ordered pairs, so this is just like 1, 2, and 3. We can find the slope. 165 minus 55, change in y, change in x, 3 minus 1. So we get 110 over 2, which means our slope is 55. Plug in one of the ordered pairs. I'm going to plug in 55, 1. So we get 55 equals 55 plus b, and so 0 equals b. So our equation is y equals 55x. And then they ask you to put in 2.5 for the minutes, which is there. So we would go 55 times 3.5 or 2.5. So that would be 137.5. And lastly, we have to write the equation of the line of best fit for the data. Now, on this, the data wasn't there, but we can check the Desmos on this one. I put that up, so we can put that up now. So here's what the graph was. It didn't show up on the chart. So we've got the ordered pairs 0, 4, 1, 4, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 4, 2, and 5, 2. So we're going to go ahead and enter those in the Desmos calculator. So we go to table, 0, 4, 1, 4, 2, 3, 3, whoops, 2, 3, 3, 4, 2, and 5, 2. Let me check to make sure that's right. Yes. So now what we do, remember, now we're going to add an expression, and we put in the formula y1 is approximately mx1 plus b. And that gives us our slope, so our equation would be y equals negative 0.48, if we round off the nearest hundredth, x plus 4.08. And then the last thing on this that they ask us to do is they ask you to tell what type of correlation this is. So if we look at this, the correlation is a negative 0.907. So it's a negative correlation. And remember, the closer it is to 1 or negative 1, the more accurate it is. So this would be a fairly accurate linear graph. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close to accurate. And so it would have a negative correlation because it's going down to the right, but it would be a fairly accurate one. So hopefully this review has helped you, and I hope you're ready to take the test.